Hi everyone, it's Roger here from What's on Disney Plus. It's time for our weekly podcast. This week we're going to be talking all about general entertainment. I'm also going to be talking about this week's episode of The Mandalorian plus Chang Can Dunk and much more. But before we go into any of that, quick bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, make sure you do subscribe here on YouTube. You can also subscribe on the audio platforms as well. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, Twitter, etc. Join our Facebook group. We have over 215,000 members, so feel free to join in the conversation over there. Right, let's jump into a few bits of news before we bring in James to do this week's main topics. So a couple of quick things. First off, Avatar has been announced. It's going to be coming to digital platforms on the 28th of March. So that includes like Voodoo. You've also got like Amazon. Now this looks to be like a shift that we are going to see much more happening this year. During the recent Morgan Stanley conference call, Bob Iger did say they're going to be kind of returning a little bit more to Windows. I suspect we would not be getting a Disney Plus release for Avatar for a little bit longer. I think we'll probably see this happening with Ant-Man and films moving on from now on. We're going to see them trying to make more money from films by doing this and following really what other studios have been doing. Universal has been doing this quite often, where they release everything on digital very quickly before putting it onto Peacock. I think we're going to see something similar to that. Basically, Bob Iger said they don't really see a huge amount of benefit from releasing them early. So things like releasing them at 45 days, I think we aren't going to see that one on major titles. We might still see it on some of the like smaller titles that maybe like from National Geographic and Searchlight, but not from those big ones. We're also probably going to see a lot less films just in general going to Disney Plus once the initial ones that they've announced have been released, because it'll be tied up with contracts and stuff. I'm going to talk about the big results, the big information that came out of the Morgan Stanley one in a little bit more detail next week. I'll also obviously be answering your questions on Sunday's Q&A, but because we've pre-recorded our general topic this week before that call, I'll leave that on there, because I think that I want to have a bit of a discussion with James about a lot of this stuff, so I thought we'll hold on to that one. A couple of other quick bits of news before we jump into that one. Peppa Pig has been announced. That one's now been released here in the UK and in 19 different countries around Europe. This is actually a show made by, it's now owned by Hasbro. It was an independent UK company, and they sold it a few years ago. Now, this is a big deal, really, because it's kind of in some way a little bit like what we've seen with Bluey, bringing in a massively popular preschool show, which will really kind of get people watching. They got 6 seasons here in the UK. I don't think this is going to be happening everywhere, but Hasbro have been kind of leasing stuff to Disney. There's a new show as well that they announced this week that's also coming to Disney Plus later this month. So there's a lot of interesting things coming in. But yeah, so that one's a cool one. I think we've actually started seeing a lot of content being removed from Disney Plus here in the UK. A lot of the licensed stuff that they did with like Studio Canal. I've been seeing lots of, and I think we're going to see a lot less of that going forward. Also, as well, this past week we have had it confirmed we got the first trailer for Renovations, which is coming out on the 12th of April, with Jeremy Renner kind of renovating with a team 4 big like American high school buses, and kind of one's going to think it was in India, one's in Mexico, and then 2 in the US, and it's all kind of hygiene. I mean, for me, this is not really a show that I'd want to watch. I am going to give it a go because I like Jeremy Renner. See how it happens, but in some ways it's very feel good, but also it kind of is one of those weird things of like, well, let's be honest, the team is doing all the work and Jeremy Renner just walks in and goes, look what I did. And then, so yeah, that's, you kind of see where I'm going with that one. Also as well, it's funny with those American high school buses, because I know when I've only ever been on one, and that was down in Nicaragua, and they have a load of school buses, and the only way to get around was in. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of iconic for a lot of people around the world to see these buses. So I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone thinks of that one there. Also, this past week we did get the new Miley Cyrus. There was a special live presentation, or not really a live one, but it was aired at a different time. It went out late last night, our time, about 6 o'clock. I did watch it. A couple of the performances I thought was pretty cool, with her just standing on top of the rooftop singing. If you like Miley Cyrus, it's cool. There's also like bits in between each song where she talks about I kind of fast forwarded them. It's just a bit like, well, I don't really. I always find that kind of thing where musicians are talking about how they do it and stuff. It doesn't. I don't really. It doesn't hit me the same way. Also happened to watch this past week the new Bono and the Edge U2 documentary that's coming out next Friday. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on next week's podcast. But now the review embargo is up. I enjoyed it. If you like U2, you're definitely going to enjoy it. Lots of history. Lots of live performances and stuff. Maybe not on par to what we maybe would have expected, but obviously they're getting on a little bit, So they did it in a different way because there was only 2 of them rather than all 4 members. That's why it's just Bono and the Edge, because the other 2 aren't involved. So they kind of did it like, I wouldn't say acoustically, but they brought in like an orchestra and stuff and did it very different arrangements. Very cool. If you like U2, so check that one out. But we'll go into that one a little bit more next week. Well, on that, let's now bring in James. And like I said, we're going to talk about general entertainment. We'll also be talking about The Mandalorian, Chang, Can Dunk, and much more. But before we do that, quick bit of housekeeping. Big thank you to our patrons and YouTube channel members, including Dana, DJ Frosttop, Ben, Tim, Chuck, David, Mahmoud, Raphael, Ricky, My VCR Still Works, Bina, Joshua, and Martin. And also we've got on Patreon, we've got Babak, Paul, Daniel, Erigi, Khalid, Red Marsman, Cody, Jacob, Darren, Lauren, Sarah, The Juice, and Andrew. Thank you so much for your support. Really does make a lot of difference. If you become a patron or YouTube channel member, you get to take part in the weekly Q&As, get a little shout out every single week on here, plus you get your name at the end of the shows if you're above the $5 level. Okay, so let's bring James in now, and then we're going to jump into today's topic. So basically the restructuring of Disney and what's happening, what we think's happening, etc. So obviously with Bob Iger coming back at the end of 2022, he said he was going to be restructuring and kind of dismantling the Disney media entertainment division. He has done so. They then announced that there's going to be 3 separate divisions. We have Disney Entertainment, which is all the films and all the television on Disney Plus. You have ESPN, which is ESPN, ESPN Plus, and sports channels. And then you have theme parks, cruises, merchandise, all over here. So now we have this coming in, and we've kind of seen last week Dana Walden, who is the head of the television division. She basically put out a memo to staff and kind of reorganized Disney. So I'm just going to go through some of the basics here. So first off, Octave Collective remains a huge priority for them. That is basically their diversity shows. We're making lots of shows like Unprisoned, which come out this week. We've also got other shows in there like Reasonable Doubt. So they're going to be pushing that more. So Tara Duncan is now going to be running that division solely. So she was running Freeform. That Freeform has now been pushed over to the people running ABC. But we're going to get onto Freeform a little bit more later on. Courtney Monroe, who was in charge of National Geographic content, she is now in charge of National Geographic. She's now in charge of the magazine, content strategy. They both will now report to John Landgraf, who is the head of FX. So FX, he's now beginning more management responsibility of other brands, which is kind of interesting to see them kind of give him more responsibilities. We're also now seeing Io Davis working more with Craig, who runs the streaming division. Kind of essentially, it feels like Disney Channel and Disney, like all of this stuff is all coming together. So we're going to kind of circle back on that a little bit later. Deborah O'Donnell is going to be running the leadership team for ABC, but also going to have Eric Shiner. He's going to be doing all the original stuff internationally and liaising with talented regional. So I want to break down like what's going on here and where I think some of this stuff's going in the future. They're obviously like restructuring because now the focus is on the studios to create the good content. Some of this stuff is, I think we're getting away from the idea now of the old ways of that's linear and this is Disney Plus and Hulu. We're kind of getting to this point now of like, look, now it's just that is television. We need to get away from the idea of that's yours and that's mine. And this has led to essentially like Disney Plus becoming, it's no longer kind of got its own division in some ways. It's now they are just feeding off of all the studios and they are putting out what they want. So rather than Disney Plus like they used to, would be like they have their own content creation team, and they'd be like, we want a show on this from you, and we want this, and we want this. Now it's kind of moving away from that, and now it's like each studio, each division is now like making their own content, and it's going to Disney Plus, and then they make a little bit of decision of where they. Most of the time, I think we're going to see now stuff shifting around between the two. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. What do you think of like Disney's like restructuring? What's going on right now?
I mean, restructuring in general is fairly common, so there's nothing specific to it. If you work in a corporation long enough, everything will restructure, including these kind of things. That said, I think this one was long overdue. I mean, we've been talking about this since before Disney Plus came out, which is, the clear division between television and Disney Plus, and kind of this, if it's coming on the television, maybe also put it on Disney Plus, like either day and date, or within a reasonable time frame, a week probably at the most. And the other way around too, if it's a Disney Plus exclusive, there's really no reason it can't eventually make its way over. Now, we've seen this more frequently in the past couple of months. Like I think Andor ended up on linear for a little bit, and Big Shot and things like that can make it over. So kind of merging them, bringing it back, keep them distinct, because you still need someone who is focused on television. You still need someone who's focused on Disney Plus, because they are two different products. But having them be a little more holding hands and working together would be
the
much
word
better.
I would use, and this might be platform agnostic. The kind of idea of less worried about where you pick your content and just put the content out. And now linear and streaming are kind of on par in terms of how many viewers. It's like, I mean, I look at like some of the upcoming shows for like Hulu. So let's say something like How I Met Your Father. That would be great on ABC. You could put that out there each week on ABC. You could put out things like you've got other shows coming out like Tiny Beautiful Things. You've got Up Here, which we talked about last week. You could put these things out weekly on ABC, and maybe some of the more serious stuff could go on the FX channel. It's that thing of you are seeing them looking at it going, well, we're spending all this content, but we're not utilizing it. And I think we are going to see more of that. We're definitely seeing it a lot. We're seeing it much faster on the Disney Channel side. That seems to be where they're really speeding up the change. What we've seen in the last few weeks, or last few months even, a drastic shift in how they are prioritized. Doesn't no longer feel like, because for a while Disney Channel the press releases wouldn't even mention Disney Plus. It was like a dirty, no, we don't do, no, that's not us. Now it's like we either do day and date, or we do next. They've started to do more next day on Disney Plus, and sometimes as well it's like, oh, we're going to do weekly episodes on Disney Channel, but we're dropping it all on Disney Plus all at the same time. I think they still need to do some tweaks, and we saw it recently, like with the crossovers going to have the same issue coming up in a few weeks. They've got to sort out what they're doing, because obviously internationally it doesn't make a bit of difference because we haven't even got the Disney Channel, but you are seeing, it's just nice to see them. It's like, oh, you guys are actually starting to play together and actually work as a company, rather than kind of, it felt a little bit like, this is my division and I get all the praise for this, so I'm not letting you have it. And like, it seems to have moved away a little bit from that.
And it needed to. I mean, it is important for various corporate reasons, like budget, to have a distinguishing line. This is content that was originally made for Disney Plus. This is content that was made to go to the movie theater. This is content that's made to go to linear, because you do need to know who to send the bill to and things like that. But the idea of, well, I footed the bill for The Mandalorian, so The Mandalorian is mine, period, shouldn't exist anymore. They should be able to go, we've got a slot to fill on Thursday nights at 7:00 on the Disney Channel. Let's throw The Mandalorian on there, or something along those lines. Obviously, there have been no announcements about Mandalorian on linear recently. Don't take that.
They showed the first episode on the day it came out.
Right.
I don't, but it's like that kind of weird thing of like they have to get Disney Plus needs some tent poles. It needs some prime original shows to get people to come over. But they don't. But there's a lot of stuff that Disney are putting out on all the linear networks, and it's like, say for example, this month in March, a lot of people go, oh, the only thing they've got is like The Mandalorian. I'm like, well, they got the U2 and they've got Miley Cyrus, but also it's like, well, they're actually dropping in the Saturdays and the third season of what is it, The Secrets of Sulphur Springs, and they're dropping in Kif, and they're dropping in Moon Girl and Devil. There's actually like 6 or 7 like Disney Channel shows which are kind of dropping in all around the same time, and you kind of look at it and go, yeah, they are putting out that original. You know, you look at Netflix just puts everything on one platform, so it's very much like, look, but Disney's been so splintered, and you're seeing it not just at Disney, other streaming services are doing the same thing of going, yeah, a lot of this is just like, I would also say like legacy problems of like linear and streaming, and they're just trying to, and also this is where they're making a lot of cuts and a lot of cost cutting, is because they're kind of starting to go, you know what? If we put this stuff together, we don't need to make as much, like you can make a third less or half as much, because let's say with Disney Plus, so like here in the UK, for example, you know, we're getting new episodes of Grey's Anatomy, Station 19, Alaska Daily. I think we're getting a Wu-Tang show. We're getting some international shows. We're getting, like in some countries, they're getting Simpsons, Bob's Burgers. They're getting Family Guy, American Dad, The Great North. And this is just like sometimes on one day, to the point where you're getting 10 to 15 new episodes on. And then someone goes, oh, they've not put a lot on there. Like, there's a lot. That's a lot. But it's because of how they're putting it out there. It's not grabbing that same attention as like, oh, no, but they only put a Mandalorian episode up to this. Like, no, there was like 12 shows that they put up, but it gets lost because of how it's being shown.
And the more you see this on social media, the more you recognize that people do just kind of see what they want to see. Because you also, the other thing you'll see is like, Disney makes nothing but remakes. It's nothing but The Lion King and The Little Mermaid. And it's like, no, they make lots of originals. You just don't watch them, because, you know, we had Encanto and Turning Red and Strange World and stuff like this. And they're original movies. But that's the perception that people have. And it's a bit frustrating to see those kind of things. You're like,
I'll be honest, I see this a lot, because obviously, say for example, recently when Bob Iger said, right, we're going to do a Zootopia, a Frozen, and a Toy Story sequel. Boom! That one went mental.
Yeah,
so many shit. They only make remakes. They only do this. No, the last 10 movies have all been original. The next 3 movies are all original. It's just the fact of. But I see it all the time, like a remake. Oh, they just do. Well, I've done like 10 other articles today about brand new stuff, and nobody's even responded to it. But something that we've seen before shoots up, and there is that element to it. But it's just a strange phenomenon of how much Disney are putting in, and I'm really hoping with the strategy of reorganizing them, I still think they need to make some more tweaks. There's been a lot of rumblings around the idea of maybe 20th Television and ABC Studios kind of coming together, because, as Bob Iger said, where's the differential between them? Where's the line of what is an ABC show to a 20th Television? Could you tell the difference? I know I couldn't. There's no.
Yeah. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago, especially in the States. I'll use some United States specific examples. ABC, Fox, CBS, TNT, NBC, etc. I could drop a show onto any single one of those, and it would not matter what station it's on. Just sure, there'll be some people like, I watch this show that's already on ABC, like Grey's Anatomy, and I see advertisements for this show, therefore, that. But that's the full extent of it. They are all functionally the same beast with different owners. Whereas if you go, ooh, this is an FX show, that gives me a distinct impression of, this is going to be more mature. It's going to have probably more adult storylines. They might be able to curse in it, show some blood and guts and things like that. And I'm not talking about like, horror movie stuff, but characters will die, things like that. FX has a very distinct feel to it. Whereas Fox, ABC, NBC, they all feel the same.
Yeah. And I think with FX, because you've seen it a lot already, is whenever they put out a new show, or they actually have like the name of the show and they have the FX logo. The FX brand is becoming a bit of they are using that brand to just say what it is, to kind of give you that thing of, oh, the bear is FX bear, or it's the reservation dogs. that FX logo instantly, subconsciously, will put that thing into your mind. And this is going to be vital, I think, in the future for Disney Plus in the US. Of like, it's not for kids. It's not a kids brand. This is the serious part of Disney Plus. This is and I think we're going to see it more with 20th Century. I think you're going to start seeing that. They're already doing it a little bit on the logos. I think we're going to see more of this between 20th Television, Searchlight, and FX. They are going to go down that National Geographic, where you're going to see that logo constantly popping up as their way of distinguishing a brand. And ABC kind of flies in that thing of like, where it's very much, and also ABC's, they can't use internationally the same way. It's a little bit more tricky. It's also very generic. I mean,
it's extremely
ABC,
generic. Yeah.
I know. Just you go onto YouTube, and I want to find the ABC channel. ABC, and I get all this kids, alphabet. It just becomes, or the Australian Broadcast Company Corporation. It is quite. It's very hard as a brand. They probably can't even trademark it. It's a very difficult branding for them to use. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if ABC and 20th Century kind of merged into a new brand at some point, using neither of the names, but a new name that's, search engine optimized and distinctive and things like that. Not imminently, not like this year, but at some point, I could see them both, because again, there's not too much of a distinction between the two, and both of the names don't really evoke an image the way FX does.
The only thing I was thinking is, I didn't know if 20th Television might be, or 20th Century might become like the general entertainment branding of Disney. So you see that movie, you see that as a new movie, or you see it at the end of a TV show, and you instantly know then that's like Disney's like family, just it's in general. It's not for kids, and that might be a better branding. The Freeform brand is one that I just still can't understand. It's almost like, again, a legacy. They've got this television channel that they've got problems getting rid of it. They've got to put that there's a Christian element to it that they got with the Club 700. There's an issue there with that. It's like, do you need Freeform? The teenage market is not on linear. The channel that this is made for just doesn't. This is not the core audience anymore. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Right. It did when linear was the primary form of getting things. It was another channel where you could go, this is the style of content on it, almost Hallmark style, But I agree with you. Now it doesn't really have an identity, and it's kind of floundering around looking for what it should be doing. Yeah. Even for a little while, it had a couple of Marvel shows on it. At least that drew attention to it. But those shows haven't been on for several years now. I think they were all pre-COVID.
Well, a lot of the shows are like they're very like teenage, like 20-something. Like they obviously they're going for a target audience, but that is an audience that have left linear, and it just feels like that. I mean, whether or not that's because that channel has been leaned in with somebody else, they've kind of it's almost feels like that one's maybe going because they've already kind of decided that it's. It might as well just make it an ABC Plus 1 channel and just chuck random stuff on there, rather than making originals. It's kind of tricky because it's they've got to find each audience and stuff. But I think it's streamlined television seems to be where they're going, and I think we're going to see. They've said about a more curated content. That might be a way of doing it, and if they can merge ABC and 20th together, they can really reduce the amount of shows. But also, and it's kind of funny, recently a show got sold to Netflix being made by 20th Television, and I think True Lies has been sold to CBS in the US. It's internationally on Disney. They're starting to sell some of the stuff that they don't want to other platforms because it makes them money. I think we are going to see. I think we're going to see a streamlining event of what they're doing with the television side.
And sometimes with those shows like True Lies, it's easier to just take a lump sum from whichever provider they went through. I think it was CBS, like you said.
Yeah.
To just take the lump sum rather than we could potentially make more by putting it on Hulu, but we could also potentially make a lot less. And just like, you know what? Here it is. Give us our money. Everyone's good to go. Right.
Yeah. It's going to be, I know there's been a lot of people like the term, like losing general entertainment and making less of it. People got into scared of like, oh, are they, are they going to make as much as, they're getting rid of? No, they're not getting rid of everything. And there's a lot of money in, but I think they've realized they were making way too much, and it didn't have the money behind it that they were hoping for. I think that's the key thing. They just aren't making as much money by making all these shows.
Right. And money is going to be the driving factor of every single decision that Disney makes. It's not about politics. It's not about beliefs. It's about money. Some of those things are intertwined, but at the end of the day, they will make the decision that makes them the most money, period. Or that they think will make them the most money. Obviously, you can't know in advance, and they'll adapt based on whether it meets projections or not. But
yeah,
I wish it wasn't. But that is just the way it is.
I also think they are. I think they might. You might start seeing less like Hulu originals. I think we're going to see a bit less of that being put on there, because they're obviously do whatever they're doing with Hulu. That's a whole other subtopic. The idea of global releases as well. That's been very fractured. Every division is doing different things. Every country's doing different things. We are seeing a lot of the internationals being released globally, but in some ways they do need probably a little bit of organization to if you got four French TV shows, the French division probably wants to prioritize how they put them out, because they need it for their market. The British ones, we've got British shows coming. You need to space them out as well, because there's no point dropping stuff all at the same time. It just financially makes sense to spread it out a little bit more. But when you put all of this together, you get, we've got 4 shows from France, and 5 shows from Latin America, and 3 from Spain, and 7 from Korea, and 5 from Australia, and 8 from Japan, and 25 from India, and some from Malaysia, and Singapore, and South Africa, and Canada, and as it keeps going, it's like, oh no, whoa, hold on, we've got like 50 shows, 70 shows here. We need to organize them. And so hopefully, because they have said that they were probably going to be reducing how many they make, but they are going to be are they working? Because there's the big key thing was they needed local content to appeal to local people. So then we need British shows to appeal to a British audience. We need French shows to appeal to a French audience. That is true, but then they're also going to be looking again, are these shows making enough money? We've got an upcoming one, Sam Saxon, the first German Disney Plus original. We got The Good Mothers, an Italian Disney Plus original coming up. There's all these different shows. Are they bringing in the audience, but also the legal requirement that they have to make for those countries? I think we're just seeing now, they're just looking at again the global expanse of going, whoa, can we just settle everybody down? It's just we can't just keep making content as the way we were.
Right. And then again, bottom line being money, the way that these shows are judged on that merit aren't going to be the same. Like, you look at The Mandalorian, you expect it to bring in a certain amount of money, but if you're importing a show from just a random arbitrary show from England, you're not going to be like, oh man, it didn't make as much money as Mandalorian. Out the door you go. There's different levels of measurement on all these things, and that's especially true for localized content going international. When they bring a show over from Germany and they release it in America, they're not really expecting American audiences to grasp onto it. Not everything can be Squid Game. That was kind of more flash in the pan than anything else. But if it can bring in enough to continue justifying bringing in the content, then they will. And these shows are generally going to be cheaper for them too, because a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are not actually being made by Disney. They're just being picked up. It's like, we see you're making a show that seems to fit our brand. Here is some funding. You give us the show, and otherwise we just kind of keep our hands out of it.
Recently, there was here in the UK, the Disney UK kind of European media, the African one. They put it in their company into Company's House, and now we can see all the financial data. So it's about 18 months kind of passed since they've gone in, and one of the key things in there was a little aspect of the fact that all shows are sold back to Disney in America, and that company then the UK company then gets paid by America, because they want global rights for these shows. the thing is, it's that kind of catch-22, isn't it? Of that's, you know, in the long term, that's a great idea. You know, you making a show like Extraordinary, we own the, you know, they own the rights, they have the global rights. The trouble was that what was happening, I think, was that all of that cost was being put on the American platform. So then when they were doing the Wall Street stuff, it's like, why are you spending all this? Well, we've brought all these shows from Korea and UK and all the rest of it, and it's all showing up on their books. But the UK one is then getting it as a getting paid for it. This again, it's all just shuffling around on spreadsheets. But those spreadsheets they're manipulating them a little bit in terms of it, because probably what's going to end up happening is they're going to end up licensing it rather than selling it and just kind of getting around it kind of in some other way. I expect we are going to see some shifting of how they do it.
Like I said, a little bit. And like these top level accounts, it is not a little bit. You're going for a full on deep tissue massage at that point, where it's like they can do magic with numbers. And I don't understand. I'm not going to pretend I understand it.
We're going to take all this tax over here, and we're going to, and then it goes.
And then it ends up being a write-off on both sides. Or I don't. It's so high. This is why these guys get paid a lot of money for it.
It's
crazy.
It's all about using loopholes. But yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on with this one. But generally, as a whole, a lot of restructuring. We're in an era of change right now. I've seen a lot of people kind of getting a little bit panicky of like. And in some ways, I feel like because Disney Plus is now like in its like third or fourth year now, whatever it is, we've kind of got a pattern. We've seen a pattern evolving, and now we've got used to the pattern, but this pattern is changing. And it's that feel of like, well, where's it going? And I think it's just constantly changing. You know, different people running it, different decisions, different strategies. Just because they have done it this way for the last 2 years doesn't mean that that's how they're going to do it for the next 3 years. They're going to change the strategies. Things do change. Things do move around. Companies, you know, as much as we all like the stability of like the regular of how they've done stuff in the past, some of the stuff we want them to change, they're making some changes. And I think we've just got to, you know, as long as we're getting the content that we like, that's the core thing. But yeah, we are in a point now where Disney is in a massive restructuring, reorganization. And it's not just Disney. Warner Brothers is doing it. You're seeing it at Paramount, Netflix, Amazon. They're all restructuring, and just the glut of content that we had in the pandemic was unsustainable. It was just unsustainable. The amount of stuff they were making and the amount of money they were spending on trying to grow streaming. Yeah, streaming grew explanation, but it slowed down. I mean, it's like recently Funko have had to get rid of bucket loads, millions of Funko Pops into trash because they made too much in the pandemic because they were selling so many, and it dropped. I mean, Pentalon, they had a problem with, they somehow thought people were going to keep buying indoor bikes when the pandemic ended, when they didn't. So things, you know, the pandemic ending kind of, we had this big speed up, and now it's like dropped off because it's actually just trying to get to an average of where it needs to be. But ultimately, that average is still way above where it was to begin with. It's just, you know, it's all shifts and roundabouts and stuff, and it's a very tricky situation. But things are just changing, and you know, Disney, it's better that they change and adapt than just keep going the way it was, because that's going to end up causing mass. They could not afford the way they were spending on content.
Well, it's what you said before. You know, during the pandemic at the beginning, and even before the pandemic, it was about growth. And growth is dependent on you having content consistently every single week. That's part of the reason we were complaining about it so much back in year one, was like, where's the content? Why should people be continuing to subscribe, etc. But as many companies have learned, and other companies will not learn from these lessons, is growth stops at a certain point. Yes, you will still get more subscribers, etc. But that graph stops going up and to the right quite so much. And that's what Netflix learned recently with the hard way, was at some point, everybody who wants a Netflix account is going to have a Netflix account, or they are not. And that's the end of the story. And they've been playing their tricks to try and, you know, get the subscriber numbers up. Disney is now kind of in the same situation where they're not doing the stupid things, but the growth has plateaued. and now they have to be in sustain mode rather than in growth mode, which, as you were talking about, means focusing on pillar titles rather than on this just fire hose of
spaghetti
content. Yeah, spaghetti on the wall, or the shotgun approach, as some people call it as well.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. It's like I think, and the thing is as well is like if Disney are putting out say 6 shows from the Disney Channel onto Disney Plus every month that are brand new, the concept of like what an original is kind of shifts a little bit. And also it is the new content which brings people in. I know a lot of people want all the classic stuff, but the simple truth is there's viewers there aren't in the same numbers that the new season of Secrets of Sulphur Springs will have more kids watching it than a show from the 80s or the 90s. It's just you can tell the fact of classic content was just not a top priority for them. You can see it. It's just pure and simple of like it's not a priority because they know it is new is what pulls people in. And they've got the core films from Disney there and the core TV shows, and they're looking at it kind of going, we need more, we need new stuff because that's what pulls people in. Those classic movies are what keep them there. Some random TV show from the 90s isn't going to add any more value to that package from the 99% of the audience.
And I think at this point, in terms of classic shows and classic movies, I don't think people realize how much effort goes into getting them onto streaming, because it's not just a matter of, well, you made the movie, just move the file over to the Disney Plus servers. Most of them have not been digitized at all. So you've got to go back and find the negatives if they even still exist, rerun it, reprocess it, probably fix the negatives, color correct and all that. Or if it was digitized previously, it might only be in like 480p. It might have been made for DVDs. It's not meant for current 4K or 1080p content. And I guarantee you, people, you put that 480p file up there and people are just going to be like, why is it so ugly? Why is it so grainy? Why are the pixels? And like, because it's 480 and you're used to 1080. I've told this story before, but I'm going to reiterate it. I took some of our old family VHS tapes a number of years ago. We put them onto the computer for my parents to be able to watch them. And, on a modern monitor, I think I was on 1080, it comes up and it's just this tiny little box in the corner. And my dad's like, why is it so small? It's like, that's 240p, Dad. That's as big as it gets,
Yeah. And also as well, I do think Disney there's a lot of stuff that's sliding onto other platforms like Amazon and stuff from Disney's back catalog. And I can't help but feel like it's almost along the lines of, right, we digitized it, we've made it better, we've done it all. But what we're going to do is we're going to sell it to another platform for maybe a year or two to cover the costs and make a little bit of money on and then they're probably going to bring it over after they've made the money back. I think there's some of that going on with some of the shows. I think there's some of the stuff that they're maybe not putting out just yet because they're holding on with whatever's going on with Hulu. I think they don't want to put a lot of classic stuff onto Hulu. And I think there is stuff going on that we are not aware of at so many different levels of them trying to make money off it. And but I have heard a few people have said to me, this show's randomly come up on it. So I'm thinking they're selling it to make it's like essentially we're spending all this money on this old show. We'll give it to sell it to Tubi or somebody else for a bit, Amazon, get the money back, and then we'll put it on Disney because it's like it doesn't matter when it gets on there. And I feel like there's a little bit of that going on there. They've worked out a way of like some of the maybe not necessarily the classic Disney stuff, but some of the 20th century stuff. They've worked a way of making money on this classic stuff that's just not going to pull the audience in the way that we hope.
But we should specify we do get it. Everybody has that little niche movie or show that they watched as a child, and maybe they were the only person on the entire planet who watched it, but it was an important part of their childhood, and they want it to be available to have that little nostalgia dopamine kick, because we all have that movie or show. For me, it's like The Cat from Outer Space. I'm not going to sit around and recommend it to people because I know what kind of movie it is, but for me, I loved watching it as a kid, so I get that extra little bit from it. It is on Disney Plus, but for other people, there are shows that they grew up with that are not on Disney Plus, and I understand their frustration because you want to have it there, but unfortunately, it's just you.
And also, I think another big issue is what kids want to watch now is new now. They the whole thing of I said like some parents, I want to sit there with this show that I watched or that I liked. Yeah, but your kid is not really. They're not going to have the merchant. Disney will want them to watch the latest stuff so they can sell the merchandise and all the rest of it with it, rather than some show from the 90s or the 70s or something like that, which there is that aspect to it. But also, I know, like with my nephews and stuff, that they want to what all their friends are all they all want the new. They all want the new stuff, and I think, and also it's made for them. It's made for their generation. It's made for these kids right now with modern sensitivities. It's about them. And they're going to have that same. And they've got. I mean, kids have got so much choice. It was funny. We were watching TV the other day, and something came on. It was like a stop motion animated TV series from like the 60s, and it come on. The theme song come on, and I started singing. And my wife was like, it's like, well, my dad made me watch it when we were kids. And it's like, turned out there was only 12 episodes of this series, and I still know the and it's like, yeah, they just repeated it so much, but it's like some random 60s show from the 60s that I shouldn't really know, but yeah, I have that nostalgia for it because of what my dad. But it's you have these kind of things, but nevertheless, let's now shift gears and talk about a couple of this week's newest new releases. So first off, we got Chang Can Dunk, a brand new film that arrived on Friday. At the time of recording, James has not seen this one, so he can't bring in his thoughts on it. So I'm going to share my thoughts. So this one it's a basketball film, and this kid he's kind of reinventing himself, Chang, and he ends up making a bet with the local basketball team leader that he can dunk in like a certain amount of time, because he's trying to impress a girl, but also just in general, he wants to be a cool kid. So I want to put this to you. What do you think is going to happen?
He's going to have.
It's a high school drama with sports.
He's going to either have to put together a team or find his way onto a team. It's going to have some training montages. We're going to mix in some teenage romance drama, probably also because it's got an international element to it, probably some overtones of that as well. And then they'll have their game, and either he'll lose by a very little bit, or he'll make the shot at the last second, probably a dunk because it's in the title. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you got probably it's probably got about 4 out of 5 of them right.
Yeah.
So it does have a lot of that aspect. A lot of the stuff you can see a mile away. There are some interesting aspects of him with his mum, who's working hard, and the relationship between them. That was a little bit more. I thought that was a nice touch to add that to it. Kind of gave it a little bit more realism. And there's a high school party with the cups and all and all the rest of it. There's a point though in the movie where it said exactly what happens. It dunks and you're like, wow, did that move really 2 hours really go by like that quick? Like, I actually checked the time. Like, I still got like an hour to go, and it's like we had the stereotypical straight through, and then from there there's a twist, and then it kind of twists a little bit, and the downfall, and there's a social media aspect and a meme aspect to what happens, and everything kind of goes wrong, and then he kind of eventually, obviously, he learns from the experience. He's he's still training because he still wants to do it. And as you said, that last moment he gets on the team, you know where it's going to come. But I did appreciate the fact that they kind of they took a twist and shifted it and kind of came at it from a slightly different angle to still get to the same place. I wouldn't want to watch it again. I think I give it like 3 out of 5. But I appreciate that they tried to kind of, at some point, shift the story a little, because it was very kind of run-of-the-mill, every stereotype you could fit. And we've talked about these in the past with these kind of movies. It was I don't know if I would recommend it to everyone to watch, but just in general, I appreciated that there was this little twist. There was definitely a little twist to it, but is it enough? I don't know. There's a reason why it's gone straight to Disney Plus. But the kid playing Chang, he's really good at it. Brings in an element of realism. It doesn't feel quite, we said before about like these high school kids that look like 30. They've all got flash houses with swimming pools and drive the latest Tesla, and they've got even him just buying a phone was a problem for him and his mum. A little bit more, they've got no money, and I like the fact that it felt more real. It wasn't quite like and I like that aspect. It felt a little bit more. They still hit all the tones along the way, but it felt a little bit more realistic.
It didn't feel like a CW teenage show or whatever, or even like Big Shot, because that was one of the things with Big Shot was they're in a very upscale area of California, so all the main characters, minus I think one, had money, a lot of money and affluence, and they had the backyard swimming pool and so forth. So it's nice to have a different take on it.
Yeah, no, it was perfectly fine. It's I think it was a solid story. It had some good elements to it, but it didn't blow me away. But it was fine. It was good. Also this week, and obviously a new episode of The Mandalorian. So this one was the second episode. Again, James hasn't seen it yet, but this is this kind of weird thing of like, there are some aspects to this one which most of it is about going to Mandalore, and you've got Bo-Katan is a massive part of this episode. The two of them. There's some fun scenes in it. There's some amazing. If you're a fan of Rebels, there's one moment when they're in, and the whales.
Well, the whales were in episode 1 too, or at least the shadows of them.
Yeah, was that episode 1? See, I thought that was episando 2, because that's the thing.
Well, I'm not sure what you're referring to specifically. Yeah. There might be a scene in both, but in the first episode, there's a scene where Mando is sleeping in the cockpit and Grogu's up in the and he's doing like and you can see the shadows of the whales in the hyperspace tunnel.
I thought that was episode 2, but so there's a whole thing of like they go to Mandalore, and there's one moment where he goes into the water, and there's something in the water, but it's so much more interesting than the alligator from that first one.
Yeah, if you guys remember last week, I was not overly impressed with the alligator. Visually, it was amazing. The entire sequence is visually amazing, and it wasn't the crocodile or alligator itself that I had a problem with. But
this one has a cool one. There's also the whole thing of like Grogu having to go get Bo-Katan to help, and just seeing her in action was a lot of fun. Also, the droid being scared was quite fun, and kind of obviously there was the whole aspects to this one. It was again a really good episode, loads of fun aspects to it, proper Star Wars stuff. But I'm really enjoying this show and can't wait for you to watch it. But let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Right, on that note, guys, thank you very much for watching. We'll be back next week with another episode. And on that note, guys, thank you very much. See you guys soon. Later.